In the spring of 2008, Atlanta. Francis Anderson had built his reputation as the managing partner of one of Georgia's most prestigious civil law firms. His personal net worth, later examined by investigators, exceeded $50 million, primarily consisting of his law firm equity, real estate holdings, and various investment portfolios. Rachel Anderson, his wife of 8 years, maintained her own successful career as a pediatrician at a leading private healthcare facility. Coming from the prominent Matthews family, she represented the third generation of physicians in her lineage. The couple's only child, 3-year-old Michael, was set to inherit what the family had built over generations. In mid-April 2008, the Andersons hired Dorothy Jenkins as their live-in nanny. Her credentials appeared impeccable. 20 years of childcare experience, glowing references from prominent families across 3 states, and a bachelor's degree in early childhood education from the University of Virginia. Background checks revealed no criminal history. The references, when contacted, spoke highly of her professionalism and dedication to the children under her care. What the Andersons couldn't have known was that Dorothy Jenkins was an identity carefully constructed over several years. The woman who entered their home that spring day had previously operated under at least 3 other aliases, as subsequent investigations would reveal. Each identity had been meticulously crafted with forged documents. During her first months with the Andersons, Dorothy systematically gathered information about the family's finances, legal arrangements, and daily routines. She gained access to Francis's home office under the pretense of cleaning, photographing documents when the family was away. She monitored their online banking activities by installing keylogging software on their home computers, disguised as routine system updates. Bank statements would later show that she had already begun testing their security by making small, unauthorized transactions to offshore accounts. Dorothy's plan, as detailed in notebooks found years later, demonstrated a level of preparation that shocked even veteran investigators. She had created an elaborate network of false identities, established multiple bank accounts under various names, and prepared documentation that would later be used to claim a familial connection to the Andersons. Her ultimate goal was to gain control of the Anderson fortune through their son, Michael, whom she planned to raise as her own after eliminating his parents. Most disturbing was her attention to detail regarding the family's habits and vulnerabilities. She noted Francis's preference for evening tea, Rachel's late-night work schedule at the clinic, and the specific layout of their home security system. She had even documented the response times of local emergency services during previous calls to their neighborhood. The Andersons' wealth had made them an attractive target, but it was their routine and predictability that made them vulnerable. The investigation would later reveal that Dorothy's preparation extended beyond mere observation. She had systematically built relationships with key service providers in the Andersons' lives, from their regular maintenance workers to their security company staff. These connections gave her insights into the family's habits and home layout that would prove invaluable to her plan. On September 15, 2008, at approximately 9:30 p.m., Dorothy Jenkins executed her meticulously planned scheme. That night, Dorothy prepared the tea as usual, but added a potent combination of sedatives she had accumulated over several months through various prescriptions and underground sources. The toxicology report would later reveal traces of multiple prescription sleep medications in the victim's systems, at doses significantly higher than therapeutic levels. Once the Andersons lost consciousness, Dorothy began systematically collecting crucial documents. She targeted specific items: inheritance papers, financial records, custody documents, and the family's estate planning files. She took Francis's laptop containing vital legal documents and client information. In what investigators would later recognize as a deliberate attempt to mislead them, she scattered some papers and created artificial signs of robbery. The next phase of her plan demonstrated extensive premeditation. Having studied the house's electrical system during her employment, Dorothy created a short circuit in the basement's electrical panel. She had previously disabled specific smoke detectors and removed batteries from others, ensuring delayed detection of the fire. The fire investigation unit would later determine that she had strategically placed accelerants in locations that would promote rapid fire spread while appearing accidental. At approximately 11:45 p.m., as smoke began filling the house, Dorothy collected the sleeping Michael from his bedroom. Security camera footage from neighboring houses, recovered later, showed a woman matching Dorothy's description carrying what appeared to be a child to a dark-colored sedan. The vehicle had been rented 3 weeks earlier under one of her false identities. By the time emergency services responded to the fire at 12:23 a.m., the basement and first floor were fully engulfed. Despite firefighters' efforts, Francis and Rachel Anderson were pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner would later determine that smoke inhalation was the primary cause of death, though the high levels of sedatives in their systems had rendered them unable to respond to the danger. Detective James Carter arrived at the scene at 6:45 a.m. on September 16. A veteran of the department's major crimes unit, Carter immediately noticed inconsistencies that set this apart from typical house fires. The pattern of document removal was too selective, with specific important papers missing while others were left behind. The fire's origin point showed signs of deliberate manipulation of the electrical system that required technical knowledge. Carter's initial case notes, later crucial to the investigation, highlighted several suspicious elements. The home's security system had been disabled using the family's own code. The fire had originated in a location that would maximize damage to potential evidence while ensuring a delayed discovery. In the days following the incident, a thorough examination of the scene revealed further evidence of premeditation. Investigators discovered traces of sedatives in partially melted teacups. The home's security cameras had been systematically disabled over the previous week, with footage deleted in a way that suggested technical expertise. The pattern of missing documents indicated someone with intimate knowledge of the Andersons' financial and legal affairs. The investigation also revealed that Dorothy had made extensive preparations for her escape. In the weeks leading up to the crime, she had gradually moved personal belongings to a storage facility registered under an alias. As Detective Carter would later testify, every aspect of the crime showed careful calculation. The choice of timing, the method of incapacitation, the selective removal of documents, and the staging of an accidental fire all pointed to a perpetrator who had intimate knowledge of the victim's routines and home layout. The crime scene, he noted, was not just about murder. By late September 2008, Dorothy Jenkins had resurfaced in Minneapolis under the identity of Mary Baker. The transformation was comprehensive. New social security numbers, birth certificates, and a complete fabricated background establishing her as Rachel Anderson's sister. Through carefully forged documentation, she claimed legal guardianship of Michael, now renamed Thomas Baker. Dorothy's selection of Minneapolis demonstrated strategic planning. The city, with its large population and distance from Atlanta, provided anonymity while maintaining access to sophisticated financial and legal services necessary for her scheme. She established residence in a middle-class neighborhood, deliberately choosing an area that wouldn't draw attention to her sudden appearance with a young child. The psychological manipulation of 3-year-old Michael began immediately. Dorothy employed techniques that investigators would later identify as systematic gaslighting of a minor. She methodically replaced his existing memories with fabricated ones, telling him stories about their shared past and dismissing his recollections of his parents as dreams. To solidify their new identities, Dorothy created an elaborate backstory. She enrolled Thomas in preschool, providing false immunization records and previous residence documentation. She joined local parent groups and established connections with neighbors, carefully constructing a narrative about relocating after her sister's tragic death. Her attention to detail extended to creating a digital footprint, including social media accounts with backdated posts showing their supposed life together. Using the documents stolen during the fire, she initiated claims to various assets through multiple jurisdictions. Her approach was deliberately slow and methodical, designed to avoid raising suspicions. She filed paperwork establishing herself as the child's rightful guardian and sole surviving relative, using the chaos following the Andersons' deaths to her advantage. The financial aspects of her plan revealed sophisticated knowledge of estate law. Through a network of accounts established under various aliases, she began moving small portions of the Anderson assets, careful to stay below thresholds that might trigger automatic reviews. She hired legitimate attorneys in different states, compartmentalizing information so no single lawyer had a complete picture of her activities. Dorothy's interaction with Michael Sauter Thomas showed calculated psychological manipulation. She maintained strict control over his social interactions, limiting contact with peers and adults who might question their relationship. School records from this period show she frequently changed his schools, preventing him from forming lasting relationships that might lead to uncomfortable questions about his past. The success of Dorothy's identity transformation relied heavily on timing. She had chosen a period when digital record-keeping was still transitioning from paper systems, making it easier to insert false documentation into official records. She exploited gaps in communication between different jurisdictions and agencies, using the fragmented nature of state record-keeping to her advantage. The investigation would later reveal that during this period, Dorothy maintained multiple safe houses and escape routes, suggesting she never fully relaxed into her new identity. She kept packed bags ready and maintained several vehicles registered under different names. Through multiple court petitions, she established Thomas Baker's status as an orphan, securing full guardianship rights. Dorothy's financial scheme proved remarkably sophisticated. She gained access to trust fund accounts established for Michael's care through a combination of forged documents and manufactured court orders. She maintained meticulous records of expenditures, creating a facade of responsible financial management while systematically siphoning funds through a network of offshore accounts. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, Detective James Carter refused to let the Anderson case grow cold. Despite reassignment to other cases, he dedicated his off-duty hours to pursuing leads. His investigation uncovered a pattern of similar crimes spanning multiple states. In each case, wealthy families had suffered suspicious deaths, followed by missing documentation and disputed inheritances. However, the perpetrators had always managed to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. Carter's persistence led him to mortgage his home, investing personal resources into the investigation. He established a network of contacts across state lines, working with other investigators who had encountered similar cases. His approach focused on tracking financial transactions, believing that somewhere in the complex web of money transfers, a pattern would emerge. Thomas's development during these years reflected Dorothy's influence. School records showed him as an intelligent but socially isolated child. His teachers noted his reluctance to discuss his family history and his unusual maturity regarding financial matters. Dorothy maintained careful control over his social interactions, discouraging close friendships that might lead to questions about their past. Detective Carter's investigation during this period revealed crucial patterns. The perpetrator consistently demonstrated intimate knowledge of legal and financial systems, suggesting a background in estate planning or financial services. However, connecting these cases proved challenging due to the different identities used in each instance. By 2015, Dorothy had successfully integrated herself and Thomas into Minneapolis society. She maintained membership in several civic organizations, cultivating an image of a devoted single mother who had sacrificed her career to raise her nephew. Carter's investigation took a toll on his personal life. His obsession with the case led to the end of his police career, but he continued his work as a private investigator. He established connections with financial crimes specialists across the country, building a comprehensive database of similar cases. Though he couldn't prove it yet, he became convinced that these crimes were the work of a single perpetrator who had perfected the art of disappearing with both children and assets. The years of manipulation demonstrated Dorothy's exceptional patience and attention to detail. She understood that successful long-term deception required more than just false documents. It required the creation of a completely believable alternate reality. As a top law student, Thomas had attracted attention for his exceptional understanding of estate law and financial regulations, knowledge unknowingly shaped by the woman he believed to be his mother. The standard background check for the internship included fingerprint analysis, a routine procedure for positions involving sensitive legal documents. The fingerprints were automatically cross-referenced against multiple databases, including those containing evidence from unsolved crimes. The system flagged a match that seemed improbable. Thomas Baker's prints matched those recovered from a child's toy in the Anderson case 15 years earlier. Initial document verification revealed disturbing inconsistencies. Thomas's birth certificate listed a hospital that had never existed. His early medical records showed patterns of alteration, with inconsistencies in paper age and ink composition. School records, when thoroughly examined, contained subtle discrepancies in formatting and documentation styles that suggested systematic manipulation over many years. The revelation prompted a rapid expansion of the investigation. Genetic testing using preserved samples from Rachel Anderson's medical records confirmed what the fingerprints had suggested. Thomas Baker was Michael Anderson. The DNA match probability exceeded 99.9%, leaving no room for doubt about his true identity. Detective James Carter, now working as a private investigator, received notification of the match through his network of law enforcement contacts. The discovery validated his years of pursuit, proving that his seemingly far-fetched theories about connected cases had merit. His extensive case files, maintained meticulously over 15 years, provided crucial context for understanding the scope of Dorothy's deception. The investigation team discovered that Dorothy had made a critical error in her long-term planning. In creating Thomas's background, she had focused primarily on legal and financial documentation, overlooking the possibility that physical evidence from Michael's early childhood might survive. The fingerprints, preserved as evidence in a cold case file, provided the irrefutable physical link that her paper trail had been designed to eliminate. Forensic analysis of Dorothy's documentation revealed the elaborate nature of her deception. Each layer of false identity had been crafted with extraordinary attention to detail. But when examined as a whole, patterns emerged. The team identified specific techniques used to age paper, alter official seals, and manipulate digital records. Techniques that connected multiple cases across different states. The psychological impact on Thomas Michael became a central concern for investigators. Mental health professionals specializing in long-term trauma and identity displacement were brought in to help him process the revelations. His entire understanding of his past had been systematically constructed by Dorothy, making the truth particularly difficult to accept. As news of the discovery spread through law enforcement channels, other cold cases began to show connections. The team identified similar patterns of document manipulation and identity creation in at least 3 other cases involving wealthy families and missing children. Each case showed the same meticulous attention to detail and sophisticated understanding of legal and financial systems. The investigation revealed that Dorothy's scheme had extended far beyond simple identity theft. She had created an elaborate network of false identities, each backed by years of carefully manufactured documentation. Her understanding of legal and financial systems had allowed her to operate in plain sight, using legitimate institutions to validate her false narratives. The trial began in September 2023. The prosecution constructed a methodical timeline, demonstrating how Dorothy Jenkins had orchestrated one of the most elaborate criminal schemes in recent history. During 3 months of proceedings, the prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of premeditation. Forensic accountants detailed the systematic manipulation of financial records and trust funds. Document experts testified about the sophisticated methods used to create false identities and manipulate official records. The prosecution demonstrated how Dorothy had used her understanding of legal and financial systems to maintain her deception for over a decade. Witness testimony proved particularly compelling. Former neighbors from Minneapolis described Mary Baker's controlling behavior and Thomas's isolated upbringing. School administrators testified about frequent, unexplained transfers, and Dorothy's insistence on maintaining unusual levels of control over Thomas's records and social interactions. Mental health professionals explained the psychological impact of long-term identity manipulation on a developing child. Dorothy Jenkins maintained her composure throughout the trial, showing no emotional response to the evidence presented against her. She refused to testify in her own defense, communicating with her legal team only through written notes. Her defense strategy focused on attempting to create reasonable doubt about her connection to the original murders, arguing that she had merely assumed care of an abandoned child. The prosecution's case culminated with testimony from forensic experts who connected physical evidence from the 2008 fire to Dorothy's actions. They presented detailed analysis of accelerant patterns, electrical system manipulation, and the selective destruction of evidence. The medical examiner's testimony about the sedatives found in the victim's systems demonstrated clear intent to incapacitate. Former Detective James Carter provided crucial testimony about the investigation's progression over 15 years. His methodical documentation of similar cases and pattern recognition had been instrumental in understanding the full scope of Dorothy's activities. His testimony helped jurors understand how seemingly unrelated incidents across multiple states formed part of a larger criminal enterprise. The most powerful testimony came from Thomas Michael himself, though still struggling to reconcile his true identity with the life he had known. He provided clear accounts of the psychological manipulation he had endured. His testimony revealed Dorothy's systematic efforts to erase his early memories and replace them with false narratives. After 12 weeks of testimony, the case went to the jury. Despite the defense's attempts to create doubt about Dorothy's direct involvement in the murders, the evidence proved insurmountable. The jury deliberated for merely 2 hours before returning with guilty verdicts on all counts. 2 counts of first-degree murder, kidnapping, grand theft, identity theft, fraud, and multiple counts of document forgery. The judge's sentencing statement emphasized the calculated nature of the crimes and their devastating impact on multiple families. Dorothy received consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole for the murders, plus additional terms for the financial crimes and kidnapping. The judge also ordered full asset forfeiture, ensuring that Dorothy would never benefit from her crimes. Dorothy Jenkins currently serves her multiple life sentences at the Federal Medical Center, Carswell in Fort Worth, Texas, a high-security federal prison for female inmates requiring specialized or long-term medical or mental health care. The facility was selected due to its enhanced security measures and ability to monitor high-profile inmates requiring psychological evaluation. Prison records indicate that Dorothy maintains her disciplined demeanor in confinement. She follows a strict daily routine, much like she did in her previous life, and spends most of her time in the prison library, reading legal documents. Despite mandatory psychological counseling sessions, she has shown no remorse or acknowledgement of her crimes. Prison staff have noted her continued attempts to maintain control over her environment, leading to additional security protocols specifically designed to limit her influence over other inmates.